Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll just turn on my camera quick. All right. So I think we are good to. You can hit record now. So thanks everyone for joining. We have 50 people in the audience, 51 right now, and this is one of our first of many events we will be hosting here on the CG Lounge. This is now Pizola, the legendary Pizola. Sorry,
Hello.
as presenting Lord of the Rings Heroes. It's a pretty cool project he worked on, and he will share some insights, what he did, and how his team delivered the project. So welcome, Pizola, and thanks for being the first in our events.
No, thank you for hosting me. So
Sure.
we're going to start. I don't know if many of you saw the video. Some of you already are following me. So what we did is like a small intro cutscene for one of the expansions of the mobile video game, and this is how it turned out. So as you can see, this is a small sequence which was made in surprisingly only 1 month and a half, I believe, or 2 months at most, from the early stages of animation to the final stages of rendering. This was done using Maya, this was done using Houdini and Redshift. We had a team of animators on our side, on the opposite visual side, and there were also 4 other different effects artists. So we were able to deliver this as fast as possible. So without further ado, I'm going to be showing you what the workflow is. Um, Believe it or not, I come from the Houdini side, but we had to dive into Maya first. So what we did here? Before everything has to start, I had to do some work ingesting stuff. Ingesting is part of the process when one team transfers some files to another team. In this case, the team I had, I don't know if somebody is here, but we were with Jamie, with Aaron, with Tomala. We also were with some animators like some people from here in Argentina and Spain, and we had to have a workflow where we can export these files properly to Houdini. And we were also using Prism as a pipeline manager. What is Prism, you're going to ask? Well, this is how we organize our shots. When you're working with a team, it's very essential that you are organized. And if you're working with a team which is everywhere, like one is in Spain, one is in Canada, another one is in Mexico, you need to have a proper organization. In this case, we decided to use Prism, where we can divide our assets between shots and also assets. And the first step was to organize all these characters. As you can see, there are some Maya files here, and I had to load them in, move around here, see if the rigs were okay, see if the geometry was okay. Uh, Luckily, there weren't any mistakes. So I had to also go into what's called the asset manager or the stage manager, and selecting all these uh, these tools and also the character itself. And I had to do this once for every single character and file. This will be exported then into an Alembic file. This is what we decided to use into the products. As you can see, for example, for Gimli, which is this asset, I don't know how to say it in English, guys, but in Spanish it's enano. This is saved here into the actual character and the weapon. As you can see, there is a master version, which is the latest version saved. Once we had everything saved, which are the characters, which are also the torches, and which are also the environment of the assets, where the environment was dragged from one of these shots you will see in a moment. We went into the exploration part of the process. All the exploration was done inside Houdini. Let's hop in into one of the files made in Houdini. Let's see about this one. As you can see, if we go into Houdini, we also have this tab, which is Prism, and we also have the same project browser. So everybody that was on the same network had the ability to connect between different file versions, whatever. So instead of sending the files, yes, this will be available in YouTube later as I'm recording it, and probably Arvid is also going to be sharing it. Okay, so coming back, the first stage of the process was to work inside the assets. And we had to make a couple of tools because, as you can see, we have a little bit of too many shots and little time to work. Remember, this was done only in 1 month and a half. So, what a better way to work fast than creating tools? One of the first tools that was created was the Vellum tool. Since we have a lot of characters, we had to make a workflow that works fast, selecting every single character. You will see in this case I was using R1 as a test. I had to resize it to this be working on meters because the project in Maya was in centimeters, so the export ratio was very big, and Houdini is working on meters. Then I created a simple animation, and this was enough for me to work creating the tool. There is a good thing about Prism that you can also share tools in the project environment. I'm going to do a quick test. Let's say I want to create a tool which is a sphere. If you are using Houdini, you know if you press Shift C, it creates a subnetwork. You can name it, and the usual workflow is to go into digital assets and create a new digital asset. But with Prism, if you want, you can select Prism actions, you can publish, and this tab will open. You can save this as a project HDA, allow the external references, and what this is going to be creating is that if, let's say, I create a tool and I have a colleague working on another asset in another file, on another, everything is different. Once I upload this, let's publish this, it's going to save and it's going to execute this. Now everybody can access this tool everywhere. So if I press sphere, okay, maybe what's supposed to happen, maybe I used the wrong word, but supposed to happen is that the tool is going to be available for everyone, for everybody. And in this case, the cloth tool is the great example. This cloth tool, if you see here, is saved into our studio, into the project, into the same project, into resources. This shouldn't be here. Where if you save a tool, it's supposed to be saved into the documents usually. But this way of saving tools allows it so everybody has access to the T drive and to this tool. And what's good about this is that every single time you save a version, it will automatically go forwards, right? Instead of overriding the tool one and again and again and again, you are doing version. Why is this is important? Well, this is very important if you work with a team, so you don't mess with others' work. This is one of the most useful things around, at least on the Houdini environment. If you are not working with Solaris, in Solaris there are a bunch more things, but we're not going to be covering this as for now. So, what is this tool actually doing? This tool, okay, this is going to be perhaps a little bit overwhelming, but what we are doing is to create a series of parameters. So we can select the character in question. We can select how this geometry is going to be interacting with the Vellum solver. And if they have hair or they have birds or whatever, there is another tab which we are going to be controlling for a separate simulation. This is an stylized simulation because the characters are stylized, so there were no grooming involved. So let's hop in. You will see this tool is quite big. But it's quite big because there were a lot of automatization going on because I wanted my team to not have problems while using this tool. I want them to just work. If they had a problem, I would update it and they will update the tool on their files eventually. So what's going on here? As you can see, I have all my assets ingested. These are just different files of different characters. And the first step was to name. Always in Houdini, what you need to do is to name properly your files, right? So I name it after what they are: Legolas, Frodo, Gimli, Aragorn. And I also added this in case I need it. This is the character 3, 2, 1, whatever. I merged them all together. And you will see with this, if I go here into the selector, you will see Aragorn is selected. So what I'm going to be doing is to delete everything that's not in fact R1. You will see everything that's not R1 is going to be deleted. This is the same. It was a little bit more complex, but it's the same thing or the same idea if you were to have orcs. The problem is that I have many different orcs and I only wanted to have one singular tab. What I basically did here is to load the orcs, pick some stuff, and also to know how many points they have. So if the orc in question being inserted on the first input has the same number of points as anybody of these ones, it will get automatically deleted. Hence, we will have the same proxy and the same character involved. Usually, when you work with this type of characters, what you actually want to do is to have it on the rest position because you usually want to have the most unchanged version of a character. If it works on T pose, it should be working on every single pose, unless I know it's an elastic character or something like that. So moving forwards, right now we're using R1, and you can see we have different setups. The R1 setup is this one for the Vellum. What I'm going to be doing is to split things. In this case, I don't really care about the path file or path attribute since every single time I get R1, the same primitives are going to be selected. It doesn't matter where she is unless I export it wrong from Maya. So what I'm going to be doing is to remesh because usually a remesh is better for Vellum. As you can see, this is double-sided, but I really didn't care too much here because it's going to work regardless of that. I did get in some cases a mask so I can do a distance from this mask, but in this case there weren't any masks, so I just painted on top. And I separated again based on the actual dress and on the part on top. You will see there is a mask painted. This mask is just a simple paintbrush, and what I'm going to be doing, since right now I'm visualizing the mask attribute, is saying, hey, everything that is mask equals to 1, so everything that's red is going to be going into the contact group. The contact group is basically, hey, you're going to be pinned into the animation. The same is I'm going to do here, so I just want a little bit of motion in these blue areas. Then I'm going to just paint it so it's a little bit easier for me to see, to bug it. And I, just in case, even though there's no animation, just in case I'm going to freeze it on the first frame, 10:01. Then I'm going to paint a little bit. In this case, I didn't need it to change the stretch and stiffness. I could change it by just painting on top. I'm going to add a little attribute expression. Basically, what this is doing is to also work on the bend and stiffness. It's like I'm adjusting it. And on the latest thing, as you can see, this is painted a little bit. Is basically changing the bend stiffness. There is the stretch stiffness is how much it stretches the volume, and the bend is how much it basically bends. The stronger the bend stiffness, the stronger is going to be the simulation. So this is what we have. We are already everything automated with the controls character, which is basically this one here. This is already simulating. So I have everything controlled, and you will see if we start moving forwards, we are going to go. Let me show you with the view and this one. You will see that this one goes straight into what is going to be a custom point deformation. In this case, I have these typos. I have this, which is the animation, if I'm not mistaken. No, this is also the typos, and this is the animation, right? Let me see. Somewhere on here. Okay, this should be way smaller. I think this is going to be an issue. Let me work. This is okay. Back again here. And what this is going to be doing is to basically move. I think this should be working. Let me see. Okay, now this is doing a point deformation from these typos in the middle with this cloth on the middle too, and with this animation. Oh no, this is the initial position. My bad. This is the initial position um, part of the workflow, because even though I'm working on the central position of the whole scene, not every character is going to start on that section. So I had to work with the animators. It was not always possible to do a blend position from 0 to the animation. As you can see, these are 15 meters. It was going to be rough for me to organize with the animation how I wanted the pre-roll. This is called pre-roll. So what I did is to change the first frame, as you can see, from the T-pose to the initial state of our animation. This comes from here. This whole setup, even though it looks a little bit scary, what I'm doing here is grabbing the character, rest, doing the rest position on this frame, and extracting with our initial pose, which is here. We'll see. As you can see, we have these guys. What we are going to do is extracting a point which already has the transformation, the orient attributes. So once we actually start moving forwards, a little bit of rotation tricks and matching the size here, you will see I have a point where the character is. So I can get a rough estimation on not only where this character is, but also where it is looking at roughly. It doesn't need to be so precise. Why? Because I am going to do a rest position, a blend shape from my first frame to where I want it to go. It doesn't matter if it blends or moves a little bit, it's going to work anyways. This is before actually moving into my animation, which is this one, as you can see. So the first part, which is the balance shape, is very important to have it done always with character Vellum simulations. So moving forwards, this is basically the what we are going to be injecting into the simulation. It's the blend plus the animation, and we have the static frame and this, which is what we are going to be extracting. You will see there is a bunch of things, but the only difference is that in some cases I'm using some solutions, like some constraints for perhaps the hair, perhaps a little some clothing, perhaps some characters are different or have um, different features, like some necklace, or maybe they have something else. So I need to be organized with this. This is only tied into our selector. In this case, it's R1. So I know R1 is going to be this balloon constraint here. So what I'm doing here is grabbing my balloon cloth. It's in this case having more or less the usual from default settings. The only thing I change is the stiffness. Yes, the stiffness of the stretch and a little bit the stiffness of the bend. This will change, or this will control how much it works with the Vellum simulation. In some cases, not in this one, I use a shape match for the metals. The shape match is the same as having, let's say you have a square, and with Vellum, when you add a cloth, it bends on its own, but you want it to be more solid. So you should be using a shape match. That's a way to have solid stuff in Vellum. Then in some cases, I did want to have an attach. This is with the contact group, as you can see. And you will see you have some points. This case is everything that has a point is going to be attached into the animation because I don't really want to simulate this. There's no need for that. Everything that doesn't have a sphere here is not going to be connecting. It's going to be moving freely, more or less. There are also some stitches for example, in this case, R1 has this piece separated. So what I did is to select the points from the source and from the target, and they will be connected like stitched together. You will see that I'm not using a group. I'm selecting um, uh, like on a destructive manner. Why? Because I really don't care. Because on every single file, this is going to be the exact same remesh. That's the good ideas of actually working with tools inside Houdini and also with Prism. So moving forwards into this simulation, you will see it will start rolling. It will move into the initial shape. We have some colliders like the hands, like the face, the boots, whatever. And it's working. It's already working. It will move. It will use the animation, and this is already exactly what I wanted. It is a little bit slow, but perhaps 2 minutes most. Yes, it is being recorded. So this is what we have. This is the rough Vellum simulation. And what we should be doing right now is to do the actual post-processing, where we are going to be grabbing our actual clothing. So this one, our clothing, we're going to be separating this with the skirt. In this case, there's no skirt. We're going to be separating this with os. In this case, there's no os, and we're also going to separating this, which is like a band. In this case, I had to do some separations because some assets has something in particular that um, they weren't actually be working. This is part of the orc treatment. If we are going to be going on the right side, if we were to select everything but the orc, if I'm not mistaken, this is the usual workflow. In this case, I'm going to show you in a moment with orcs. So this is the animation. So animation we have. I'm going to 10 shift it and subdivide it. I was told by the guy who is going to do renderings that he wanted to have two Houdini cat mole Clark and 1.5 on Chris White because that's the style is was going to be required. And what we're going to be doing is to grab also the T-pose of this animation of this Vellum simulation, and we're going to be point deforming based on the path. So everything that's the part on the top is going to be just blended with the part on the top, and everything which is, for example, this skirt or this section here is going to be blended based on object path naming. I could be using ID, I could be using whatever. In this case, I chose path. That's a nice workflow to keep in mind. Try to always have the path attribute from Maya to work with. So as you can see, if you go here, you will see this is the same but post-processed. And this is what I was going to be exporting to the rendering team later on. Um, there are also some other things which are, for example, Gimli. Let me check with Gimli. I think this one is Gimli. Yes. Okay. Gimli has the same process. If I go here, let's make this quick, and I need to change and use Gimli. The only difference is in this case, Gimli has a bird, right? So we need to separate that later on. So this is the filter character, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm creating this, which is just a separation of the bird. Later on, I need to create a proxy because if we were to look at this is very messy. We cannot work with this inside Vellum. We need to work around it. So I'm going to be grabbing the hair, going to be iterating over each one of these guys, which I named accordingly. I'm going to be polyfilling this. I'm going, just in case, I'm going to be doing a VDB. I will also be grabbing the character, and I'm going to be like subtracting the BDB a little bit, so it's not actually colliding inside the character. I'm going to be converting this. Look at this. This is very low res, but this is exactly what I need, and I don't need much more here. And then I'm transferring the name because it's always nice to have the name later on. I'm doing this for every single branch of these hair sections, and I'm poly reusing this. This is the geometry I'm going to be injecting into the simulation. You will also see procedurally, I am going to pin this, and I'm going to be also changing this section. So I'm unpinning everything that's below this part. The process is the same, and I'm simply adding a cloth constraint. Then I'm sending this to where it belongs in the animation, same as before. Let's show you. Enter, yes, but the animation is right here somewhere. And then I'm just, well, basically, this is very interesting. What I'm doing here is all the pin groups which I made here are going to be moving, and everything else is going to be stationary. This is useful when you just want to do, after doing the constraints, where you want to move something pinned like driven by an animation. Why I decided to do it after the constraint and not before? Because if I do it before, even though it's going to work, it's going to be calculating also the constraints later. So I prefer to calculate the constraints once and move the pins after the fact. Yes, yes, Salman, I'm going to be uploading this into the YouTube channel, and I think we are also be uploading it with Arvid. We're going to be designing that later on. Um, well, and in this case, the animation is very nice. The collider has everything but the head. Eh, grande, grande. And well, when this starts to move, this, look at this. This is very fast. It's doing the blend shape, and then it's just going to be moving. In this case, there is no that much of a motion. Let's see if I can actually see. This is the name of each one of these Vellum hairs. And then I'm going to do the same process with these hairs, subdivided, the same naming, and I'm going to just point it from this. As you can see, with a simple uh, with a simple simulation, I can get motion. It is usually necessary to have a little bit of motion, so it sells off better. So this was the basically the grooming, no, not the grooming, the cloth tool which I made with the yeah David Jones. So this was basically the tool I made for the team, so we can work faster on every shot. It was quite a process. Uh, Moving onwards, let's try to. I have another file open here, which is this shot. So as you can see, there is a bunch of things going on. In fact, very slow for my machine. Load this in. Space. There is some smoke. We have some particles floating somewhere here. That's from here. And there is also smoke on the floor, which I'm not turning on because it's going to explode. So let's start with something simple, well, not simple, but the most interesting part, which is the environment dust. You will see, hey, but this is at the back. This is not, and this is strange and very low res. Okay, this was made on purpose because everything that's far from the camera shouldn't actually be having the amount of resolution we want. In fact, let me look this. I believe this one is the front. You will see that the amount of resolution involved is very different. Very different. Everything that's near it's actually very high res. Well, I don't know if very high res, but it's high res. So let's hop in if my machine allows it. In fact, this is taking a while because the viewport is lagging a little bit. First, press D, and if you go into texture, no, not texture, but on geometry, you can set this to low and to be a little bit faster. Okay, so let me just also load one singular wedge because I'm using a wedge system. Let me just look for the wedge I want. Case it should be number 6, I think. I want to have the one on the front selected. I don't know which one because it is this one. Okay, the number 3. Yes, I can reduce that also. In fact, I'm going to be doing 5 12 5 5 12 5 5 12 70 volts, and in fact, I'm going to reset the viewport will lapse. So now I can move way faster. Okay, thank you, Ari, for that one. I forgot. And I'm going to also be changing this to normal. No, okay. So what's going on here? Let's try to load the characters. As you can see, we go with the camera. Character is moving downwards. It's moving downwards. It's going to the ground, and it is actually moving the simulation. One nice thing about Prism is that you can, with the State Manager, save a lot of flipbooks. In this case, we have some flipbooks for the Vellum and some flipbooks for the environment. Let me show you if I open the Explorer. I think I could double click, right? Yeah, I can double click. Well, the only bad thing about this is that my VLC is broken, but you will see how the smoke moves in the ground, which is very nice. And this is a very nice tool because we can also be saving every single version on every single task. I believe Richard, yeah, Richard is here, and he can also, you can also go into his Discord if you want to test Prism out. Okay, so what we did here, let's start with this, is to actually create a box where I want all my simulations to work. Then with the Prism Frustum, which is a tool I made, I'm going to be easily shown what's going on here. Let me open this real quick. What this tool is doing is creating a box, grouping the front and grouping the back. Then with the primitive, I'm enlarging it, and everything is going on inside this point bob. What's going to be working is I'm grabbing the camera, and then I'm moving one of this group, which is the back, in the direction the actual camera is looking at, right? So based on this, I can then group, I can then do booleans, I can do whatever I want. In this case, I decided to do a boolean out of this, right? So this is going to be where all my simulations are going to be placed. What I'm doing here is to basically grabbing a grid where I want all my simulations to be working right now. In this case, is I'm going to have 9 simulations because I decided it's with this grid. Then I'm going to do another custom on top of it because there's no need to simulate anything that's outside our camera vision. Then I'm going to facet everything right here. So what this is actually doing is to separating the polygons from each other, right? Let's move this here. Okay. Then I'm doing a connectivity, and what I'm doing here is to actually just looping so I can actually get this number, the number 8, which is on details and is the amount of iterations we have. We have the num iteration and we have the iteration number. This is very nice to have. If you were to see my tutorials, in the latest tutorials, I'm using this workflow to have more dynamic simulations going on based on clusters. I'm going to also be showing this where it's connected. It's connected into the labs file cache. So what I'm doing here is to actually packing this because I want to get the distance from the camera. Let me turn on the camera because it's turned off here. I'm checking the distance from this camera point to all the different cluster of simulations right here. In this case, I'm also packing all these points and adding them. Then what I'm doing here is I'm shifting this somewhere and doing also the distance. What this is generating is a distance from all these points, the near one being 3.6 meters right here, and the farthest one being 25 meters right here. This is basically be going to be changing the distance, which is 3 to 25 to 0.01 and 0.017. What is this? Well, this is the resolution. The nearer you are, the more closer to this value you are going to be. So 0.01 division size. If you are right here, which is far away, you are going to be we are going to be actually having 0.17. You will think, hey, that's not much of a difference, but that's actually like having half of the resolution. Yes, dynamic voxel size based on the distance from the camera. I actually did last week a really nice tool which is more complex than this, and it's actually working with the amount of resolution of boxes you want in the camera view. It's very similar to this concept, basic. It's like grabbing the distance and saying, hey, you are full resolution, how much voxel density I should be having, and you will know that usually you want to have either from zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5 or zero point 0.6 voxels per pixel. You don't need less than that. I mean, you don't need more than that. That's actually a good resolution. I'm transferring this to all the points right here. So now I have this remap distance. Then I'm unpacking this and I'm basically saying, hey, which class are you? In this case, if I shouldn't be touching this, if I'm going to be selecting the wedge number 3, which one 0 1 2 3, I guess it's this one. See, yes, it's basically selecting and blasting this guy. Then I'm also promoting this to detail to be more organized. This is going to be what's going to be diving into the solver. This see, is connected here. Then I'm going to be poly extruding, doing a bounding box of where I want the simulation to be working. This is going to be going into my in case we are using GPU, this is going to be using the maximum distance of the bounding box. And then I'm creating the source. I'm basically doing a density. You can see I'm using also the same division size I used for my simulation. You will see what I'm doing is basically creating a simple volume deformation. It's going to take a while. I have this one exploding my machine a little bit. Let's just lower the resolution here. Or okay, perhaps too much by 2. So this is what we are going to be using. What I did here, okay, this is more complex than I remember, but basically I'm grabbing the positions. These positions are going to be basically forming our noises and deforming our densities. What I'm also doing here is based on the time, just changing some of these additions. So you can see there is like a pattern, and it's changing our turbulent noises. Um, these turbulent noises are actually, as you can see, multiplying our density. There's actually, if I'm not mistaken, yes, there's no deformation here. There is just multiplication of noises. Um, and this one is very key here because it's actually dependent on the size I'm using on the Y position. In this case, if I do not have this one, you will see. Let's let this load. Okay, this not loading. It will fill the entire volume. So this one is key. So it's multiplying from 1 to 0 in this case. There's some more noises. Well, this is a bunch of noise, one on top of each other, basically deforming, not deforming, but multiplying the density. And this is the first stage I want to have, a simple volume. In this case, what I'm also doing is to create a small fall-off on each of the sides, because if you remember, I'm expanding this 75 centimeters on each side. So what I'm also expecting is I'm expecting that there should be a fall-off. So the simulations go on top of each other kind of seamlessly, right? So it doesn't create so many errors in simulation. I mean, in render. And then I'm shifting this because I actually don't want to have um, an animation here, and I'm converting this again to BDB. I don't know why I did this. Yes, this is unnecessary. And on this side, what I'm doing is to creating the velocity. In this case, I'm just adding velocity all over the place, as you can see, and I'm merging these guys together because this is going to be the initial, going to be the initial, initial velocity, right? So one more thing is that based on this, I'm frozen the whole environment because I don't need to have a volume, I mean a collider for everything. And I'm shifting this because the camera is also moving, so I need to time shift it. Let's go. I'm splitting what I don't need, like all this around here. I really don't need them, and I'm extruding this volume downwards. So this is going to be my collider, and I'm with a pyro shape. I'm creating a collision. The pyro shape is just a tool I had, but basically what's only going on here is BDV from polygons, and I'm turning this into a surface called collision. That's all it's doing. No more science behind it. And in this case, I also grabbed the arcs and I added a trail so I can compute the velocity, and then I turn this into a collider. Also, the only difference is that I expanding the band voxels. The equivalent is this one, BDV from polygons. And I think this one's the resolution. I'm saying this is a collision, and I'm also saying grabbing the point velocity, saying this to be and displacement, and I'm using world units and field interior. No, I'm using this one. So basically, I'm expanding the velocity field. This is if you want more or less interaction with the smokes. So that's what I decided to do. And if I go into here, let's try to lower the resolution so it's a little bit quicker. I'm using sparse, as you can see, because the GPU at that time I didn't have what I needed for it to work. Right now I could be using GPU, but I don't want everything to explode. This is the limits. As you can see, I'm also using this detail, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, I'm using this. No, I'm using the box 3. I'm grabbing the size of the X axis, the Y axis, and the Z axis, and I'm centering. I'm using the center to everything being at where I want. So in this case, nothing is going to be outside this box. That's basically what I'm doing. And then I'm grabbing the collision. I'm basically this is on. I shouldn't be having this on, but I was testing stuff with a GPU. I'm also sourcing the density and the velocity, as you can see right here. Let's see what else. No much more. Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, yeah, all the micro solvers should be here. In this case, I actually didn't need any micro solvers because all the details are here. Well, in this case, this is very low res because I'm in a low res simulation here. But all the details are there, and all I'm doing here is to add vectoring this with this method. So if you go into the first frame, you will see it just works here. Go into the sourcing. As you can see, I'm just emitting on one singular frame. I don't want to emit over one frame because this is already stationary um, um, stationary simulation. So you have press play. This should start moving a little bit. You will see the smoke will start doing something. Calculating this is quite a slow process because this is in most detailed simulation. But if I look at it here, you will see this is already cached. It's like it has a little bit of motion going on here, and the colliders are working perfectly. This is exactly what I wanted. I could have done a separate simulation for the smoke movement, but in this case, we killed two birds with one rock. So all the these effects were approved by the client and were ready to go. And imagine if I was to use this resolution on every single simulation as a single one. It would be impossible. There's no way. There's no way to do it. I already have 36 million voxels only on this section. If I were to go all around here, my machine would die, and I have 128 gigabytes of RAM. So this was totally necessary. So then I did a simple pyrobake. So this is more subtle. This is only for pre-visualization because we are not going to be rendering this. And I can change the values and go simulation per simulation. Try to go into the fourth one, into the fifth one. You will see it's working just fine. And this is a very nice way to work because the time this saves and the file save this saves is astonishing. If we were to go into the file, you will see this is the small run high properties. This is 56 gigabytes. You will see, you will think this is a lot, but it's actually very good for 9 simulations. And this was the fourth simulation, I think. No, the third one. You will see this one is the biggest one. It's 200 megabytes per frame, which is a lot for a BDB. And in some cases, I only have 44 megabytes. So this is this is a really nice way to optimize your simulations. And this is basically the ground. In this case, I also did the same for the back, but the difference is that all the simulations are very lightweight because they are far from the camera. And as you can see, I'm actually being open. Battlefield is worth it. I don't understand the question. Can you rephrase it, please? Okay, and basically, see, this is the biggest resolution we have, and the furthest we go, the worse it actually looks. But nobody's going to be able to see this in render, so it's the same. And it's the same process. It's the same tool we created, and we're using it on every single one. Uh, oh, if it was saving velocity for the motion blur, yes, depending on the simulation, not always. Usually, what I do with the velocity is to save the velocity with a different voxel size. Let's go back again. Let's just go to one singular field. As you can see, where the density is zero point 0.1, the velocity is zero point 0.2. This means that this velocity is 8 times more lightweight than the density. And you also doing this, as you can see, with resample volumes is cooled. So where there's no density, there is not going to be any velocity. Density is going to change into 16-bit instead of 32, so there's going to be less space saved. These are all the optimizations you need to do. It depends if you want to do motion blur or not. Then we have some sparks. Oh, this effect is actually very nice, very simple. This was not done by me, it was done by a colleague. When we have the environment, is basically just using this chain, and is also grabbing the orc and blasting all needs, which are the hands, and with a little trick, chase this spark sub network. Let's see what he's doing here, because I really did deep diving into here. But if I'm not mistaken, yeah, he's grabbing the grabbing distance from the masks, and he's then scattering. So forwards, he's scattering points based on the distance from the hands, and he's transferring also the velocity from the character. So if I show you the velocity, they are basically following the hand animation. I'm deleting stuff which is below a certain threshold. And what's most important here is this pop network. This pop network, even though it looks a little bit confusing, it's actually very simple. These are just some colliders. The ground collider, which in this case we don't have. This is the source collider, which is let's look which and is this one. Shut hands, and we have the external collider if we were to use something else. All the colliders combined together are going to be working with a POPs solver. The POPs solver are obviously going to be the points from this one basically. And we have a couple of settings which I cannot really explain so fast because I didn't do this tool. But basically what this is doing is doing a random seed on the bouncingness. Basically some particles will bounce a lot and some others won't bounce a lot. This is what's going on. It's an seed from the ID. This is how little they can bounce, and this is how much they can bounce on the attributes on the pop object here. So it's controlling this value here. Then I'm using he's using drag here. There is a point bop, which, if I'm not mistaken, yes, it's another way to remap. Oops, I shouldn't have done that. It's another way to remap what we did here, right here. See, so there's no, so it's not so uniform. Then he's changing the p scale. In this case, he's changing the p scale also so it's not so uniform. And I don't really know why this was used in such a complex manner, like changing the velocity direction. I believe this was done for the meshing and the orientation too. Yeah, I know. He used some particles, but later on he decided to just use some poly wires, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and these are the particles that are falling. Very nice. See, the cursor goes down and the particles fall down. What's most important here, and you should be learning, is that you need to simplify your workflows as much as possible. Sparks, if is some client tells you I need Sparks, pop solver. Maybe some pyro simulation for that vection, which in this case wasn't necessary. So what he's doing is blending so he has interpolated frames, and with this tool he got I don't know where he got this tool, but he was using this in some other projects. What he's just doing is a simple selection. These are some lines. That's about it. It's just a trail node. This is a glorified trail node, as you can see, which we're not going to be diving in because this is not my tool. But basically, it's the same as doing a trail right here. We already have ID. Let's say we use 2 points and with an add. Oh, this is the Houdini's default. I didn't know. I usually do. I usually do the tools on my own, and I try not to use these shelf tools. That's great. That's actually very great. Well, I'm going to show you regardless how to do this without it. So you grab the trail right here, and if you have the same IDs and you do the polygon and you do by group and you select by attribute and ID, you will have this same or roughly the same lines. This is probably being multiplied um, based on the velocity and the direction. So you can see this one is constant, whereas this one is not. You were saying you can bake camera motion. I believe like a fake camera motion blur, right? I did that once with a point bob a couple of years ago. I don't know the solution. It was very complex, but I get what you mean. Usually when you have a really nice moving camera, what you want to do is to deform the particles so you can fake the motion blur, because getting that to work in render time is going to be very expensive and usually not worth it. And these are the particles. Also in this side we created a simple what's the name here, oh, a simple emitter for the smoke. uh, See, oh, I moved out. Yes, what he did is to create a simple particle emitter. This is the same as before, but with way more particles. I would have used way more, but this already worked because you don't need such a big resolution. Then basically it's grabbing the simulation and he's saying, hey, based on your age, you are going to be having a different p scale. Then I'm going to be creating I'm going to be keeping all these attributes, and I'm going to do a pyro source with density and temperature, and you will see these are dying, so the size is small, and these one are beginning to be born. And if I go into the pyro solver and I press play, this is very fast because the resolution is that big. This is going to be just adding a little bit of smoke. We could have improved this resolution, but again, this was not going to be so visible. It's going to be very diffuse, and we're going to be saving. And this, I forgot talking about Prism, the file caches. This saves so much time because usually when you go, you either use the simple file cache, this one, or the labs file cache. Everywhere I needed clusters, I did use um, the labs file cache because I needed the wedging system, right? Otherwise, even though this is, I do know this is going to be coming in Prism in the next couple of months, I believe. Uh, Otherwise, I used this simple file cache where what I needed was to be used in order to be organizing all of our caches because um, we were many people working on this project and we needed to be or to have some organization for the delivery. The delivery is the part of the process where you give out all the caches to the next team. In this case, it was going to be the look dev and the rendering team, which I have no part, at least on that project. Maybe if I'm lucky, opposite visual is lucky, we're going to have more work going on there. So as you can see, all the caches named are going to be saved automatically. If I press Open in Explorer, you will see I have the caches and I have a version JSON, which basically what this is doing is to connecting the cache with this what's the name with this viewer. So this is very easy for us to control. In the newest versions of Prism, we have the options to create special tags, to group the selections, which I still haven't used them because I worked since about 2 weeks ago with version 16.3, and this is very new. Uh, so it's very nice. Luckily, Richard is always looking at our feedback in the Prism Discord, and is updating and creating a very cool tool. So you should actually be trying that out as soon as possible. So yeah, and this is storing the versions, and you can comment. And if I were to say, hey, I saved this version and this is what I did, you could actually save it in the comment section. And this is basically the simulation of the tool. Um, I think moving forwards to the last part of this presentation is going to be the a really quick look at some what's the name, crowd simulations, and the final torch simulations. There are some really cool tricks there. So this is the file. What we did, this was a little bit complex because nobody in our team was so sure how to tackle this. If we were to use a copy to point on some um, pre-baked animations, or we were going to be using FBX. And one part of our team called Aaron started working with all the documentation and created a cool tool for us to work on two of our shots. We have like, if I were to show you here, is leave this one. All this right here is a crowd simulation. Different assets, different tools, different animation, different everything. So what we did is to save the FPX on a folder, different characters, as you can see, with likely the same bone structure. That was very key. And we started injecting all these clips of animations, saying where is the locomotion the bone located at. These are different animations like idle, bomber idle. Well, we were mixing all the different animation clips. You can see there are a bunch of animations. I'm not going to be going on top of each. but basically it's like, hey, I have this character and I have all these sets of animations you can choose from. Then I set everything here. You can see they have custom names. Then this where it says armas is weapons in English. Basically, I'm saving all these weapons with different names, different transformations, cleaning them, making them sure to be working in the final simulation. And I'm also layering them on top of each other and saying, hey, if the drum stick should be using the drum stick tool, which is basically where the names are stored at. This is like going a little bit forwards on complexity. These are some more tools moving forward. So this is if the client needed more tools, we would just made a different agent layer and move it on top of each other. As you can see, this was added later on, another agent layer, and this is the preparation, which we are preparing all the bones to be located where we need. This is a simple, well, it's not simple because I'm still very confused about it, but what this is actually doing is to grab an agent clip, is grabbing the foot and the ankle of all the characters and basically not allowing them to move. They are stick to the ground. That's why the ankle, the foot, the ankle, and the foot is with this foot plant node is being stuck on the ground. So because we don't want them to be moving around anywhere. Well, these are just preparations for the clips. That's just before the simulation, and this is to test how the interaction with this was not used, but we are testing how all the connection with the different animation and tools is working. This took a couple of weeks. This was the most complex thing we did. Then we are creating the source. It's going to be taking a while, but basically we are creating where all the characters are going to be located. Let's going to be loading any moment. There we are. So as you can see, the sourcing had a lot of client feedback. When you see this, it's because there's a lot of client feedback, like moving one character some other place and so on. These are all the characters, all these points. He's relaxing them, so because there were some overlaps like here, relaxing the points. Then he's doing further edits on this process. He was also arranging them to be on top of the geometry, which is this one. You can see some characters are on top of rocks. Um, then there's a wrangle here, which is grabbing the center of each point, and all the points are looking at the center. If we were to velocity, well, this is normalized and it's clearly very small. Let me move this a little more. See, all the guys are basically pointing to the center with the groupies. This is for the orientation. Then we are basically loading all the names, all the different states which we are going to be having, because well, the states are going to be driven by the solver, which we're going to be looking at in a moment. You will see this is what they are doing. It already looks good, but they should be swapping, or they should be changing the weapons. As you can see, nobody has a weapon right now. And I believe there's not much else to look at. Okay, this is a randomization of the initial frame start. So in order for the source not to be all starting at the same time, so you will break the repetition a little bit, we use this one, this code here, which is grabbing the clip times from all the different characters, and is depending on the clip time offsetting the frames. That's all it's doing. Is setting the agent clip time to basically this randomization right here. So if we go into the solver, go into the first frame, You will see this is very big, but it's basically because all of these guys are loading different states. As you can see, loading the bomber idle, the animation, sword, everything we did before. We're just loading inside these merge states. All these sources are available in the side effects channel, and they have a really nice course where you can learn all and even more than this about crowd simulations. And then he's triggering with some transitions from one animation to another, some animations like looping from idle to raising the the hand and whatever, right? And this is the source, which is a pop source of the points we were using. So we are only emitting on the first frame, and this is the crowd with objects. We are basically using the transition graph, which is the cloud of points I showed you before, and not the properties, which is all the setup. Let's just look at how this looks. Ignore all of this. This is a mess, but ignore it. This is going to be the solution for the torches. And this is with a little. These are some more edits from the client, like saying, "Hey, I really want to change this weapon of the simulation with another weapon. Okay, all these things work. I want the character to be rotated a little bit to the right, to the left, to raise the hand, whatever. Everything is possible after the simulation. So this is how it looks. Let's see. This is how the simulation turned out to be. Very nice with all the tools. Everything is working. So this is the part of the crowd simulation. I'm going to be moving into the last part, which is the effects. I don't know if I did it here. I think I did it here. See. Yes, we were on a rush, so not everything is so organized. But just to finalize this presentation, so we can go into the questions. What I did roughly here. Yes, you can always ask. I'm free to, and it will be really fun if you have any questions I can answer. So what I did here is to select all the orcs which had torches, as you can see. Then I decided to the same trick to basically know how many orcs do I have, how many staffs. In this case, I decided to save all the staffs. You can see. If I move here, I do know I have 14 staffs going on here. And I can delete one based on the wedge number. This is the same trick I did for the environment, and I saved this into different wedges, so then I can just loading singular wedges everywhere. This is a red time I did with a tool I created. This the tutorial is on my channel. This is how to make it slow motion. Why I did so slow motion? Because there were some animations that were really fast and there was stepping going on. And one of the solutions I created was to actually do the solution in slow motion and then retiming it back to real time instead of using substeps. Sometimes using substeps is kind of complex because you cannot see the solution or the desired quality fast. So I decided to use just a slow motion simulation. And I'm separating the collider with the collider animation, the stick, is the animation of the stick. Then I'm grabbing this tool. So basically, I'm painting. If I were to show you the mask, I'm painting where I want everything to emit flames from. And this is a very cool trick where what I basically did is to grab the oh my god, I don't remember. Is to grab this the name this torch. It's a part of the torch, but I made some masks and I grew hair from it. And you will think, why are you using hair if you're going to be emitting flames? Well, basically, if then I decide to use a point deformer, as you can see here. Um, I can go into a Vellum constraints, pin the initial points, and do a Vellum simulation, and then use that Vellum simulation to have more detail on our sources. This is very fast, as you can wait, and let's turn this off. You will see this is moving, and I'm using those strands as flame emitters. The only thing I did is to have some gravity going upwards to fake the buoyancy, and I remember I added some noise. Yes, I added some noise inside here, so it's moving. Then I created more hair with this hair generation and this static frame and the animation frame. I created more hair, which I then transferred the velocity from from these points. This is just a simple scatter. Let's Where are the points? Why are these points so small? Uh, uh, uh. But it doesn't matter. There are some points here. Let's at least on dark so we can see better. Yes, here we are. These are the points which have some noises working, and I'm transferring this velocity on the first part of the this part of the I don't know how to speak suddenly. I transferred the velocity from these points to the simulation because the simulation was too noisy for me in velocity times. Then I decided to create um, some attributes for this Pyro solver, which we can actually see if we press this QRV. These are all the QRV of each of these strands, basically going from 0 to 1. And based on this, I created, hey, the closer you are to the geometry, the more heat you are going to be emitting, the more density, whatever. And I'm also emitting more burn here. You will see this is the burn I want in some cases, but I also want it to be respecting this burn attribute right here. I'm transferring this at the end of the day, at least on the basis of on all the roots of the simulation. What I did here is to simulate and then save everything into all the torches. You will see that all the torches are separate simulations. Same trick as the environment. All the torches are separated. And I don't remember changing the, oh yes, and the voxel size. No, in this case, the voxel size is not dynamic, but I could have made it dynamic. Finally, you will see, well, this just works. If I were to load everything, let's also load the characters. Oh, I should be merging them. This is the pyro bake, and these are, I believe, all the characters merged, right? Yeah. So you will see every single torch is lit and ready to go. Of course, there were iterations with the client, so I want this font to be a little bit stronger here and there. But once that tool was approved, we moved forwards with uh, this asset creation. And I don't know, I think it turned out pretty cool. You will see I design all the tools, I mean, all the characters have Vellum simulations working. And I could be talking way more time, but I think this is good enough for what we have. So, I'm glad you were here to look at the presentation and uh, showing how I work with the team, how we use Prism for this to be more dynamic, to be easier to talk with the client, and I hope that you enjoy it. If anybody has a question, you can raise your hand and we can have a quick questions and answers. I'm really willing to have a talk with you guys. So, what do you think, Arvid? How this presentation went? I think it went pretty cool, right?
Hey, yeah, no, it went really cool. I like the insights on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was quite curious about the animation cycle. So, did you internally animate everything? Like, did you have an animator for the project, or how was that done?
Yes, we had a couple of animators because all these assets were brought from this- yes, all these animations were brought from Unity, in fact, because it's a Unity game, and they were translated into Maya. In some cases, we gave these animations to some animators and looped them. In some other cases, the animations were already looped. So the
Okay.
asset preparation was quite messy because the client said, "Hey, these are the files. Take over. Do what you need to do." So as you can see, it's not the same having assets prepared for video games than assets prepared for cinematics. So there were some work we had to do there. And some of these
Okay.
actual hero animations were also done with the opposite visuals. And we have some cool animators from Spain, some animators from Argentina, and we are expanding there quite a bit in department.
Really cool. I think Eva Fries wanted to say something.
Uh, Thank you. I don't know the name of who is speaking because I'm recording, so I have only the initial letter of the name. But thank you, Mr. C.
I see. Oh, I see. You've got the truncation on. Yeah.
Yeah,
CDA 3D Live says great job. Eva, do
amazing.
you want to speak? Like, I think you requested to be invited, so you're on the stage. You just need to probably join the stage to talk. If
It's
not, I have one more question.
sure.
Like, I know you're using Axiom on the side a lot. Why didn't you use that for this project?
I'm using because right now I'm using Axiom because it is required in that specific project, and
Mm,
in this case I wasn't that familiar with Axiom. Um,
okay.
you would be amazed on how similar the minimal solver is to the action. I would be using action solver, for example, in places where long trails of smoke or very sparse simulations are going on. If the simulation is on a contained space,
Hmm.
I personally prefer to use the minimal solver, but
Okay.
it is a fact that the as for now minimal not having a sparse container really holds back from its full potential, whereas the action solver is actually very good at that, using minimal solutions. I mean using sparse solutions. So it depends on the context. One more context is that I was working with a team and I was the only one having action. So using
Okay.
action for
Oh,
this
okay.
would increase the budget, in my opinion, in this case, unnecessarily, right? So if I were to be on my own for a simple job, I would be using it. In this case, I had
Mm,
four other colleagues which didn't have action solver, and teaching them would actually hold us back, at least in this process. Maybe later, if we are going to be learning if everybody on the team is learning action, we can include it on separate projects. But the
yeah.
timelines were so small. I mean, all of this was done in 1 month and a half, so we need to move quick.
Yeah, pretty impressive. So Eva has a question about Prism. How easy it is to set up and use it between several people, and how fluid the sharing is. Like, what
Okay.
is your backend like for sharing? Is it, are you all on the same network, or is it like a hosting service, or how does that work?
Yes, as for now, um, installing Prism is extremely easy. You download it, you click on install, you create an account, and you say, "Hey, I'm using this, and this plugin." The plugins are the tools, basically. Um, I'm working with a team. In this case, everybody was working on my network. They were connecting remotely through either Parsec or AnyDesk. Um,
Oh,
I do have 3 or 4 machines. In that moment, I had 4 machines that were used remotely everywhere on, and all of them are connected to my T drive, which is where I have the projects. Um, I don't know if Richard is here, but I do know he's working on a cloud service for Prism, where basically you are going to be able to, if you are working on different networks, to download, for example, the heap files from a certain task. That plugin was available a couple of months ago, and it got it's offline right now. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, he can answer that. It's going to go live back again in a couple of months, because that tool is already about to be out of the beta. If I'm not mistaken, I don't want to be sharing information. I'm not so sure, but that's a really nice way to work. You can assign some people certain roles, so you, the same as Discord, where you can only see certain threads or certain channels. The same is going to be working with Prism. So yeah, there are a lot of things. Every week, roughly, we have a new update, or a week and a half or two, whatever. We have an update with all the feedback, with all the bug reports we are sending to the to the server, additions. It's a really nice community right there, because the tool is created uh, from artists, by artists to artists. So it works very nice. And does it have version control? You mean on the files? As you can see, I have 24 versions right here on this shot. In this one, I have 13. In this one, I have 7. It depends on the tasks, right? And we have medias, very different media. Everything is version. You never have to dive into a folder structure to change it manually, ever, ever. That's what's nice. In fact, if I were to go into here, which I can change project, you will see all my Houdini workflow is saved here. I have everything here. The only thing I'm not using is the file caches, because I do know nobody or not many people
Mm.
has access to the Prism right now. But these are very nice to organize even personal projects, and I'm working on my own. But it's nice to have um, version here, version there. It's for exploration. This is a very handy tool. Yeah,
No, but
Richard is talking here. He's saying, "Hey there, yes, you're completely right. The cloud service is currently in development and will be available in a few months. But currently, you can already use Dropbox or similar tools for remote teams. Yes, I haven't used those Dropbox or whatever, because you do know I'm quite lacking. It was has to do with the IT or the networking. I do what I can, but yeah, you are totally right there. I do know you worked with Karsten on the previous project with cloud services, right? With Dropbox or
yes.
something.
Yeah, we didn't have Prism though. Like we didn't have any like team management tool. We were just talking on Discord all the time because it was just us two. But I think for bigger teams, before I have been using ShotGrid all the time and production at work and privately as well.
You can
So
actually connect
um,
ShotGrid to Prism.
yeah, the thing is, ShotGrid, you have to pay a lot money for it to
Yeah,
use it
it's true.
personally. It's you pay per seat, which is quite expensive. So I'm not sure what the Prism fees are. So I'm not sure about the pricing thing, but I probably would need to look it up somewhere.
Yes, they are online. Richard can share it. I do. I don't remember, but they are not so expensive. Um,
I
uh,
should probably ask him if he can give us a CG Lounge Prism deal or something, so we can all collaborate. That would be nice.
it will be very nice. It will be extremely nice. And yes, I mean, if two persons are modifying the same file, what's going on with it? Okay, so that's the trick. You usually have departments, and you usually have tasks. You are not going to be giving all the artists the same task. So that's the trick. Let's go in. Let's go back into this project browser right here. You will see, if you go in scene files, we have, for instance, in this case, different departments, and look at all these tags. This was done by one artist, this was done by another artist, this was done by another artist, and so on. So if you are organized also with the departments and the tasks, you are never going to be overriding somebody else's work. Not even with the tools, because if you are going to be publishing a tool in Prism, you're going to be doing a version of the tool. So You just need to learn how to use the pipeline, and you will see there's not much room for error. Hi, thanks for the time. Have you considered taking this project through USD? Would be nice and interesting to do so. And do you think it costs a lot of work to carry it out? Thanks again. Okay, so in this case, I had nothing to do with the rendering or the look dev, so there was no point in taking it to USD. I I am going to be promoting the USD workflow on the next time I work with this client because I'm already using USD for some other projects and it is the way to go. Using Karma, using USD is extremely fast. Well, RVD is using USD and Arnold. If you were to see his latest live streams, it is also extremely fast, very very diverse with all the instances and copied points or well, everything is referenced, so it's extremely fast. I'm not going to be using the old methods ever again, to be honest with you, if I were to do renders. All my latest tutorials are in USD. And thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yes, it was very insightful and it was really fun to share with you guys.
All right, then I would say this concludes it. Thank you so much, Pizzolo, for hosting this. And as we all said, this will be uploaded to the CG Lounge YouTube channel and potentially on Pizzolo's channel as well.
Hmm.
And we will just cross share everything. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining. And see you probably in the next event, which will be most probably next Sunday, same time.
Amazing. Thank you, Arvid, for hosting me.
Of course. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.